Welcome back, and delighted to have with us today Robert Tosh Plumlee. He's a former contract pilot who participated in a covert aviation operation connected to the United States intelligence agencies during the Cold War. He's also the co-author of a fascinating book and bestseller called The Deep Cover, Shallow Graves, with New York Times bestselling author as well. So we welcome him today. We have a lot to talk about. There's a picture of the cover of the book on the screen. Robert, good to see you. How are you today?
Well, I'm doing pretty good, and thanks for having me.
You bet. Couple of quick things. Who are you, and how did you get involved in what you did?
I've been asking who I am for 88 years now. Well, originally in 1952, I was 14 years old, and in those years, as coming out of World War II, it was a pretty patriotic time for a young guy that grew up in the war years. So I run away from home, signed and forged my birth certificate at 14, joined the Texas National Guard, and they taught me how to drive a Sherman tank. And so I used the Texas National Guard documents and experience to transfer into the regular Army when I was 16, and I was stationed at Fort Bliss, Texas. At that point in time, they were experimenting with young, basic juvenile delinquents that were destined for prison, hanging out with the wrong people, doing the wrong things. So the court system, I got involved in the court system because I was underage, and so they gave me a choice. They said, well, you got a choice. You can go to a juvenile hall, or you can go to the United States Army with your parents' consent. So I stayed in the Army, stationed at Fort Bliss, got attached to a unit called the AAA RTC, Recon Training Command. That was a test unit. Later, later they made a movie off that operation, which was known as the Dirty Dozen. In World War II, they had started that program by taking prisoners out of county jails and putting them in special units to go behind German lines. So they adopted that program into the 50s as experimental for special ops. And that was the unit at Fort Bliss. So that's how I got connected to the military.
Okay. And then how'd you become a pilot?
Well, at that point, I started flight training, helicopter training at Fort Rucker, Alabama. And then when I got out of the military, I received my GI Bill, and then they assigned me to a unit at White Rock Aviation in Dallas, Texas, and that's where I started doing flight training. Now, prior to that, I had not an altercation, but had an experience with the CIA. While I was at Fort Bliss, while drilling, we were throwing hand grenades at Little White Post. Me and another guy, we were in a bunker there at Fort Bliss, Texas. And I looked out of my corner of the eye, and I saw my drill instructor, and he pulled the pin on a grenade and threw it in the hole where Leroy and I were throwing grenades at the White Post. And he was laughing. And I spontaneously grabbed the grenade. Instead of throwing it down range, I threw it back at the drill instructor, and it landed at his feet and exploded. But it was a practice grenade, and white powder went all over him. And the other drill instructors there on the line, they started laughing at him and so on like that. So he took me out, took me to the CO, and said I tried to frag him. I tried to kill him. And so the CO, there was other people there, the CID, Criminal Investigations Detachment was there, and there were two other guys in suits standing there. I didn't know who any of them were. And so the commanding officer wanted to know why I would kill my instructor. So I told him, I said, well, I watched him throw a grenade in the hole where Leroy and I were throwing grenades, and I wasn't going to give him a chance to throw another one. So I threw it back at him. And so self-defense or whatever.
Yeah.
So that was that incident. So at that point, two of the guys come up and said, well, Bobby, they called me Bobby, you got moxie. Well, I thought that he was accusing me of going across the Juarez, Mexico and playing with the girls, and I had some kind of VD. And so I challenged him, and I told him, I said, I don't have VD. And so I hit him, and he was a CIA guy. And that was my first contact with CIA, is that incident.
Well,
So from that, they put me in that special unit. Then they told me to go back to the 49th Armored Division in Dallas, Texas, until I turned 18. So that, back to your question of how I become a pilot, they also signed me up with White Rock Aviation with Pappy Reeves, who had trained World War II pilots there at Dallas, and that's where I got my flight training. And then from that point there, when I got my pilot's license, I started flying ops into Cuba, running guns to Fidel, a little old guy by the name of Fidel Castro, 1957. He was only had, I think it was 55 or 65. We called them guerrillas. And we were running guns from Marathon Key, Florida. I was flying a C-46, co-pilot on C-46 at that point, and we were flying guns to the Sierra Madre Mountains to this little known rebel, which I called Castrol. And that's how I got connected with the Cuban rebels. Now, on these guns, what was going on at that point, I gotta add this. We were pilfering guns out of National Guard armories and then supplying them to the rebel Fidel Castro, covertly, CIA operation. At the same time, according to the Pan American Treaty and our foreign policy, we were required by law to support Fidel Batista, the dictator of Cuba. So we were actually giving guns and airplanes and medical supplies to Batista, and importantly, at the same time, stealing guns and ammunition from the National Guard armies in the United States and shipping them to Fidel Castro, the rebel, who was fighting against Batista. I don't know if I'm making sense here, but so that's how the gun running to Cuba started and connected with the CIA. Does that make sense to you guys?
well, it's mind-boggling. I guess the question is, how did you handle that?
I have no idea. I was like at that time, I was, well, in 57, I turned 20. And I was in the Sierra Madre and had associations with a lot of the Cuban rebels at that time. I even obtained a code name. I had to crash land in a D-18 Twin Beach in Sierra Madre at the foothills in a cane field. And my contact with the rebels at that point came out. There was a young lady came out with another deal. I was in this sort of a swampy area, and they saw the plane go down. And so I'm trying to get at my co-pilot already. Well, I was a co-pilot, but my pilot had already made it to the road and got picked up. And I don't know what happened to him, but I was still roaming around out there in the foothills when the rebels, I didn't know who they were. I thought it might have been a Batiste squad. And if they had that, they shot me on sight. And I knew that. So I was trying to evade these people that was coming across the sawgrass. And there was this one lady, and she was with another guy. And they found me. And her name was Velma. Her code name was Deborah. Her M267 code name was Deborah. Deborah. That was Velma Espin. And she later married Fidel Castro. She got me back, her and Sergio got me back to the rebel camp. So that was my first experience getting in with the rebels there in the Sierra Madre Mountains of Cuba. It was Velma Espin basically saved my life. We became good friends all the way to the day she died in 2007. She was a women's movement, in charge of the women's movement, became the first lady of Cuba. And covertly through contacts in Miami, we stayed in sort of peripheral touch until 2007. I think that's when she passed away.
Okay, so you're laying a pretty interesting foundation here about ulterior motives of the CIA, and I'm trying to get my brain wrapped around it.
Well, what can I say? We had CIA front companies, call them shell companies or whatever. We had, in the crews that I was with, we had 55 pilots uh, employed by CIA cutout companies, Intermountain Aviation, Mountain States Aviation, Riddle Airlines, L.B. Smith Corporation. In the 50s, none of that meant anything. It was only later, after the investigations, that these names of these CIA front companies um, came to light. And I was right in the middle of it. I was from the very beginning.
All right, let me. I'm going to run out of.
Well, like I said, I worked for Rip.
Okay, I'm going to take a break here in a minute, but before I do, let me ask you this question. It's going to fast forward to how do you get involved in the JFK files and issues?
Okay, I'll try to speed this up as fast as I can. Okay. Private UGB Dinkin he was a cryptologist over in Europe. He intercepted some information that our teams, CIA, was recruiting foreign people, foreign agents, to do an assassination in the United States. He intercepted that information and attempted to get it to proper authorities through military intelligence and also through the Pentagon, and also through his proper connections in Germany, I think it was. And so he made these reports. Well, they thought he was nuts, so they put him in a damn nut house. But the Pentagon had received this information, passed the information to the CIA, and then they've had other information. At that time, there's all kinds of reports that Kennedy was going to be killed. They were Austin, Atlanta, Houston, all over the place, rumors. So the Pentagon formed a team. They called it the abort team, to fly into Dallas to look and see if there was any shooters that would be in position when a motorcade came by. They knew where it was going to be. Dealey Plaza had all that stuff. So that's the team that I flew into Dallas. If we got time, I'll continue. But
all right, let me take a quick break. We'll come back. Where can they get a copy of your book, Deep Cover? Where can they get a copy of that?
well, it's out now. I think Amazon has it, Barnes and Noble, most all bookstores, the way I understand it, it has it. It was released April the 21st. Okay. The title is Deep Cover Shallow Graves, written by me and Ralph Mazzullo, and published by Trenday. Okay. And so you can get it direct through Trenday or order it through your local bookstore.
All right, Deep Cover, Shallow Graves. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back with Robert in just a moment. Welcome back. Delighted to have with us Robert Plumlee. He's a former contract pilot, and he is also the co-author of a fascinating book called The Deep Cover, Shallow Graves, and you can check that out. There's a picture of the cover of the book on the screen there. It's also available online. And Robert, as you know, the President administration recently released additional JFK records. And there's a movement now to, and a task force to review the assassination files. What do you think about that? And have you looked into it and seen anything that's got your interest?
Well, okay, let me back up here. I've testified to 4 committees twice. The Church Committee in 1976. Johnny Rosselli was a good friend of mine. I knew about the assassination plots on foreign leaders. In those days, now I want to clarify one thing. The JFK assassination was just one event among many black ops that was going on. I was a pilot that was involved in a lot of other operations, gun running operations, supplies to rebel forces, working in the Caribbean. Anyway, it was a lot. So the point is this: you could write 5,000-page book and 3 pages about JFK, and the only thing that would draw attention would be the 3 pages about JFK. So that's sort of the way it is here. So everybody goes back to the JFK assassination, how it started and all that. So your question was again, don't let me rattle here.
Well, the question is, those files have been released, and now there's a task force to reopen them and look deeper. Have you looked into that and seen anything that might have been a concern for you?
I've been contacted, and here's my position. I know who you're talking about. I respect him. I'm not testifying to any more committees unless I'm subpoenaed. I've been vetted. I've testified to the Cherry Committee, Senator Hart, through all this, the story of the JFK assassination, the abort team has caused me to go head to head with the FBI on their letterhead memos. I've been character assassinated by my own government, by the FBI, through J. Edgar Hoover, back in those days of the 1960s, outright false letterhead memos. For instance, I've never been in prison. I've never wrote hot checks. Letterhead memo says I was a check writer. I wrote hot checks all over the country, that I was in jail when I said I was in flying ops. Researchers over the years, including the Senate committee, have went back and they can't find mugshots. They can't find printer records. They can't find a record that I was in a particular jail when the letterhead memos put out by J. Edgar Hoover said that I was. So the point being here, when the Warren Commission came out, they came out with a lone gunman, which was my friend Lee Harvey Oswald. Lee and I had served together briefly in Nags Head, North Carolina, in an illusionary warfare training program in 1958-59 before he went to Russia. He was there studying on language. I was there studying PSYOPs, military intelligence PSYOPs. Later, they made a movie based on some of that called The Men Who Stared at Ghosts. We were being trained to be super soldiers, someone that we could see walk through doors. We could mind control. They called it brain warfare in those years. So that's, in those years, the most important thing that we did was not get our pictures taken, make sure that the operation that we were involved with didn't see the light of day. If we had to lie, cheat, whatever we had to do, you protect that operation. It was only years later when the Church Committee and the assassination of foreign leaders and things began to leak out and committees were formed and the Warren Commission was challenged and the lone bullet theory and all that, that brought some of our operations to the surface. And that brought me to the surface. Now, in 1976, Congressman Tom Downing contacted me. They were in process of trying to get the funding with Richard Sprague and Gonzalez, trying to get funding set up to form a thing called the House Select Committee on the Assassination. They didn't have it set up at that point. I sat and drew them maps. I went through the complete profile of the assassination, our part that we played in it, the abort team, the whole shooting match. That was covered up. I was threatened with releasing classified information. The information that we had with our group that went into Dallas was classified SAP, Special Access Program, top secret committee sensitive. That information from Thomas Downing went to Sprague. They sat down and eventually got the funding, started the House Select Committee, and then documents of cutout companies, CIA, funded by CIA's black budget, came to the surface, and we were called in to raise our right hand and testify to the operations that we were involved with. My operation was I was a pilot. I flew these teams in and out of these strategic places. I don't know if this answers your question. I'm trying not to ramble.
Well, let me ask you this. At the end of the day, the files are out. It's reopened. What is your bottom line assessment?
Okay, I'll make this direct challenge to you. Look, I have 17,500 pages on me talking about those ops that I just mentioned. Now I'm going to make a direct challenge to Luna. Release the damn documents. That's the key. Here's the problem of holding back those documents, not just me, on a whole bunch of guys. If they're released, it negates the Warren Commission report, the magic bullet, all this stuff, fabrication of all that. It shows that elements, not an agency, but elements within an agency, elements within the CIA, elements within the FBI, through J. Edgar Hoover, conspired, knew, and were part of a program that had the President of the United States assassinated. I'm going to say it again. Elements within our agencies, FBI and CIA, conspired with international conglomerates to eliminate JFK. He was not eliminated by the Cubans. He was eliminated by a system, an organized crime system, international. The reason being was two directives, Directive 263 and that's Executive Orders 273. Executive Order 263, Kennedy was pulling 25,000 troops out of Vietnam. That would affect defense contracts, mainly Bell Helicopter. They would have lost $22 million in building helicopters. Remington Arms would have lost $16 million on modifying the M6 from the M14 to the M16 and the ammunition. So the point being, if Kennedy withdrew those troops, so that would have caused a ripple in our manufacturing of weapons and selling weapons. Now that's my take.
Okay, so before I run out of time, Robert, so the bottom line is you feel that if all of the information and the files are released, what you just said would be verified?
It would be damaging to our reputation for the intelligence community. They failed. The Secret Service did not forward the information that they had. The information from Eugene B. Dinkin, private to private, in Europe was not assimilated to proper intelligence agencies. And also, let me add this. As a result of this, and this is in the book Deep Cover Shallow Graves, by the way, and I was warned not to put it in there, but it's in there. So, well, I better watch out.
That's all right. I got less than a minute. Let me do this.
Okay.
Yeah, let me say to our viewers and listeners, it's in the book. It's called Deep Cover, Shallow Graves. There's a picture of the cover of the book there on the screen. And check it out. Available online now at Amazon and in the stores. 30 seconds, Robert, what do you want the takeaway of the book to be?
Well, I want people to do something. I mean, apathy. Apathy is destroying our Constitution. When you spew out poison from our leadership, you're going to get poison back. When you take the position that our leaderships, now I'm not talking politics, I'm just talking the leadership total, both parties, Senate, Congress, right, President, whatever. When you spew out the kind of poison that we're spewing out to our young people today, you're going to get poison back. Yeah. We breed assassins. That's what I'm saying. Right. We breed because of the rhetoric that comes out of our uppers. We breed. I
got to go. Thank you, friend. We'll get you back. Let me say again, the book is entitled Deep Cover, Shallow Graves. There's the picture of the cover of the book on the screen. Thank you, Robert. Thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.